You're listening to the Geekscape Network.
Time to fire up the VCR. This one's my favorite. That was gold.
Welcome to Analog Jones in the Temple of Film. I'm Steve.
And I'm Matt.
And this week, when we're going through our November family-friendly film-a-thon, we're bringing a friend here, and we got Scott. He's returning. Say hello, Scott.
Hello.
Yeah, we're going through one that you love, so why don't you announce? What do we watch?
We are watching a classic from 1989, Little Monsters.
There's nothing under your bed. Now, why don't you just go to sleep, okay?
There was a monster! There are no monsters. If you say there's no monster, then switch rooms with me.
Boo. Tonight is your lucky night. Imagine a world solely of kids. No teachers, no rules, no homework, no parents. Come on now! I'm a monster.
Then what do monsters do?
Good question. Come on, scare the hell out of her. It's our duty.
Come on, stop it!
We almost had him. He was becoming one of us.
Eric's gone. Have you seen him? Do you know where he went?
They have Eric. I know where Eric is, but I'm not leaving until I have him. If we're not up before the sun clears the horizon, we turn into monsters. Are you still in? I'm in.
Keep an eye out for monsters.
Let's blow him away, Brian!
No way out!
I want my brother!
Amaze me.
Exactly.
Take a walk on the wild side.
So this is a movie that I really don't have much of a history behind. Matt, how about you?
You know, I don't have a strong history with this one either. I've seen it. I remember renting it in the 90s. There was a video store by my house. They had it, and I think they still had sort of the prominent displays. I think they had like a counter stand and a standee in the video store for it in the early 90s. So this was advertised pretty heavily there. So I remember renting it there. And then I remember revisiting it maybe, when I was a teenager or early preteen, like 12 or something like that, revisiting it. Those were the only two times that I can remember having seen it before watching it for this, though.
Well, it's a good thing we brought someone on who has nostalgia love for it. Scott, what's your history?
I think I was 7 years old the first time I saw it. And I mean, as a kid, this is just, especially an 80s, 90s kid, before the internet, we had to have imagination. And to me, this was just a fun, just the perfect movie as a 7-8 year old to just love. And there is some like spookiness to it as well when you're kind of that age. But this to me also, it came out around the same time as like the first Ninja Turtles, and you got Home Alone around that era, and so like all those, to me it fits in with that mix of childhood nostalgic movies that I grew up loving.
Yeah, and did you walk around the house making booby traps? As soon as I saw that in there, I go, Home Alone? Question mark? I feel like this movie has, and maybe we'll address it later, this movie has a lot of different films kind of added into it, because right when he was making all those booby traps, I was thinking Home Alone, but what year did Home Alone come out?
90. This is 89.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's amazing. So maybe a lot of other films just were taking from this film.
Or it was just a time period thing, too.
No, Matt, do not sit in the middle.
No, I'm not going to sit in the middle. I'm going to give you other examples here, because like this movie also reminded me heavily of one I just randomly watched recently for Halloween. It reminded me of Nightbreed a lot as well, like a kid's version of Nightbreed with the monsters in the monster world and stuff like that. But Nightbreed also didn't come out till 1990. So this is, again, a year before that, year before Home Alone. It's the year after Beetlejuice, and we'll talk about the Beetlejuice connections as we get into like the behind the scenes. But it doesn't seem like it's ripping off Beetlejuice. It's just churning from like that time. Plus, it feels a little bit like, especially at the end, like Toys, which was around the same time, the Robin Williams movie. I'm sure as we go on, I'm going to think of other examples of like things from that time that I just feel like it was just plugged in. You know, like Home Alone didn't rip off this movie. Sorry to burst your bubble, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But like, it's just a time period thing. I think it was just plugged into like sort of the pop culture interests and, you know, family movie interests and things like that.
Yeah, and how about Lost Boys? I felt like a little bit of this like blue, like lights, early 90s look, and even Beetlejuice, which will, you know, address all the comparisons in that one. Yeah, there's something about this late 80s, early 90s blue shadows.
Yeah, of course, like Lost Boys, because it's doing like a Peter Pan thing. But again, Lost Boys was only 2 years before this, so is it just plugged in again to like what the interests are? Getting
into this, did you guys ever, you know, walk around and say the tagline of some friends can be real monsters and some monsters can be real friends? Every time I read that tagline too, it's like, it's not a tongue twister, it's just really weird to say.
Yeah, it is. It's like it's almost like a mind twister, not a tongue twister.
Yeah, it's like, but and what I noticed was that tagline is nowhere on this VHS slipcover I have.
That's hilarious.
Describing the box art here. Am I the only one with a VHS on this?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's bright. I can tell you that much. It's got like the red background with, I don't know, like the Monster City in the background, but you can't actually tell what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's very odd. And then you've got Fred Savage and Howie Mandel, you know, in yellow at the top. And I love this like neon blast of colors. You know, you've got the green neon little monsters, all lowercase, and some prick named Chrissy Kelliker wrote her name on this copy that I have. F you. Why do you write it on the front? Now, I've seen people write it on the actual VHS like label inside, which would make more sense because, you know, you could just steal this movie and throw away the slipcover. You still have the movie. You put it on the actual VHS. Okay. But when you put it on the front cover, what's wrong with you, kid? Okay, no one else has had that. No opinion on that. Let's move on.
I don't even have VHS.
You're a terrible person. No, I get it. Normies don't, and it makes sense because they're freaking huge and heavy. They're hard to store.
They're a bitch to move.
Yep. So on the back here, we've got some. All of them are screenshots, which I noticed. Maybe one production still. At the top left, we've, you know, got little Fred Savage with a red light on him, looking a little terrified. Not quite fully scared, but, you know, he's definitely shocked. And then we've got him and Howie yelling at each other, having fun when they were doing all their shenanigans. Then I noticed on this one, there's a smaller one to the right where there is an American flag in the background of them two, Howie Mandel and Fred Savage, standing together. It's tiny and confusing. I don't know if someone, like an intern, just picked that or something. Like, why, you know, America, saturated background? Why? Oh, that was a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, there's the one scene in the movie where they do the thing with the flag and say, you know, and it's like a bit thing. But yeah, is it just, did they put it on the back to like get into like the Reagan era 80s here?
Making a political statement about the Reagan to Bush era. It's like, that seems like an odd movie to make that choice.
Yeah, right. Odd choice, Little Monsters, but
yeah. And then the very bottom is the boy character. Mm-hmm. Looking very menacing with, I think, Fred Savage's little brother in the background on like a dartboard. Oh yeah, the dartboard scene. That's what that is. Okay, so our description here. Suppose you proved there really were monsters under your bed. And what if you suddenly found yourself journeying through one of them into their very strange world? That's what happens to Fred Savage, the Wonder Years, the Princess Bride, when he meets Maurice, Howie Mandel, a hyperkinetic, wild, wacky, and hip monster. His bizarre, under-the-bed world is everything a boy could want. No parents, no homework, all the junk food you can eat. Brian Savage learns how monsters come up under any kid's beds and uses this ability to pay back the school bully. But there's a catch. Brian soon gets trapped in a frightening nightmare that is all too real. And then there's a quote right in the middle of the description here. A special effects extravaganza from the LA Times. The Hollywood Reporter praised Little Monsters for having the contours and renaissance of a kid's classic. A film that confronts childhood fears in a concrete, colorful, and credible way. A crackerjack story. There you go. There's your description. 1989, 1 hour and 43 minutes. Oh, wow. An hour 43 minutes. I guess this would have been more around like 80 minutes or 90 minutes. Seems like it has pretty good pacing.
Yeah, the movie flies for how long it is for a kid's movie.
Unless you hate this movie, and then you just quit halfway through it like Sarah did.
Yeah.
Who I can tell you probably is the strongest response I've seen to her to watching a movie in quite a long time, where she gets up I'd say about 30 minutes into this, she goes, I can't do this, and goes and reads. That's like the ultimate insult to a movie. I would rather read a book.
I think that's a testament to Mr. Howie Mandel's performance in this movie, because I feel like that was probably the deal breaker.
Yeah, it turns out he likes cocaine quite a bit.
Uh-huh. But come on, that baseball card scene is like one of my all-time favorite lines when you guys, you know what I'm talking about? When baseball cards, I love baseball. Need them, got them, need them. Oh, I love it.
Boo. Keep an eye out for monsters!
Now scream.
Scream! Good idea! You know what? You scream, your dad's gonna come in here with a 12-gauge shotgun. Blow your head off, actually. I'll scream. Great. Actually, your dad's gonna come in here and find Dorito puke all over the floor. What's he gonna say, huh? Wow! Baseball cards. I love baseball cards. Got 'em, need 'em, got 'em, need 'em, got 'em, need 'em, got 'em, need 'em.
There are a couple scenes, especially that one, when he first burst onto the scene. Wow. I don't know what the director told him or, what he took beforehand, but he definitely had it in 11. I think he was trying to break it to go to a 12 or 100. I don't know. I would worry about his heart.
and according to him too, according to Howie Mandel and the bonus features that I watch on this is based his character Maurice in this is based on his stand-up act at the time. So if you were to see Howie Mandel's set in 1989, this is similar to what it would look like.
Yeah, I haven't watched a lot of Howie Mandel's stand-up. Have you guys?
No.
Yeah, me neither. So I'll take his word for it.
Is there any history that they explain in the documentary as to who they were selecting for Maurice? Was it? I just have a hard time thinking it was always Howie Mandel.
Yeah, it sounds like it came to him as a vehicle for him. I think they were trying to get him in movies because his stand-up was taking off and he was becoming a popular item. So I don't think it was necessarily written for him, because it sounds like this was a purchase script, but they hunted him down for this.
Yeah, so Vestron's we gotta have Howie Mandel. He's big, he's huge, he's gonna hit the Hollywood circuit. And all I remember him for is, I knew he was Gizmo in Gremlins and Gremlins 2, but that's not a big part. No one actually knew, except nerds like me, that he was Gizmo. But Bobby's World is what I know him from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, and this seems weirdly kind of similar, too, to Little Monsters and Bobby's World. There's definitely connections as well.
Yeah, I could see that. He had a good voice for animation.
Yeah, I think, for me, the thing that I think Howie Mandel will always be remembered for is Bobby's World.
Yeah, and also don't forget, he did a lot of voices for Muppet Babies. Muppet
Really?
Babies. Yeah, he was Skeeter and he was Animal, Skeeter, and I don't know, whoever else. I just remember, because I've actually seen something on actors who do animated voices, and he was actually on there talking about Bobby's World and also all the voices that he did on Muppet Babies, and it just blew my mind, because I was like, what? I don't know when I watched that documentary. That was a long time ago. But, I'm sure no one else has seen it, because who the hell sits down and goes, oh, sweet, documentary on animated voices? I'm there.
Me and you would watch that.
Yeah. Not many other. So, you guys ready to pop this tape in and get into the trailers?
Let's do it.
Now playing at a motion picture theater near you.
Okay, here we go. So we only have 2. Oh, I did notice right when this comes on, it says MGMUA home video. And that stands for Universal, or no, wait, it's Universal Artists? United Artists, that's it. I haven't seen that one in a while.
I don't think there's always been, well, not always, but lately it's been under the MGM umbrella, like within the last 30 years or whatever, and I just don't think they use it anymore. It's like TriStar with Sony.
Oh yeah, the old TriStar ones, or the CBS Fox.
Yeah,
they're all gone. But we had All Dogs Go to Heaven. How much did you guys watch this as kids?
I didn't really watch this one. That wasn't one that was in heavy rotation for me.
How about you, Scott?
I was thinking, is that the spaghetti, the Disney? But that's Lady and the Tramp.
Nah, this was a girl and her dog. The dog dies, and it's about getting him back and stuff like that. So yeah, I watched this one a decent amount as a kid, mostly because my grandma had it. So if it had dogs in an animation, my grandma always bought it. I mean, All Dogs Go to Heaven. Definitely Lady and the Tramp. I watched that, and I'm Fox and the Hound. Basically, she's just like, I'll buy you any animation that has a dog in it.
Well, now you're an expert on a specific subgenre of animation.
Yeah.
You're like, I
Thanks,
know dog animations pre-2000. I got him.
The next thing is really what I want to talk about, because this is fascinating, and we had these in the early 90s. Think Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. We got a monster hotline that has the entire 2-minute promo has a monster rap.
The Little Monsters movie is about to begin, but before it does, I'm gonna fill you in. Want to win some super prizes when you're not alone? And some fun's as close as your telephone. Dial M for Monsters. 95 cents a minute for a game so rare. But before you call in, check with Mom and Dad. Call the Monster Hotline for adventure and fun. You'll have 20,000 chances to be saying I won. Now what? 900, yeah, 89. Maurice.
Where you call 1-900-89 Maurice. It's 95 cents a minute. And remember, kids, ask your parents first.
Get your parents' permission.
I don't know what this is for other than, bullshit prizes and making a little extra money. Because at least with Bill and Ted, it was a trivia game where you win prizes. Was there any game with this?
So they don't explain it in the Monster Rap commercial, but the Blu-ray also has the screener promo that was on the screener tapes when this came out. And it explains it better in that. And in that, it says that the standees, the posters, and the different things at the video store have clues on them. And then you call in and you have the clues. And then, you put, I don't know if it's trivia or if it's some sort of problem solving thing or whatever. You use those clues you got from the video store to then be entered for the grand prize.
Oh, wow. You watched it a lot better than I did.
Well, no, I'm saying there was a screener commercial on the Blu-ray as well that explained it better than the Monster Rap did.
Yeah, because I was kind of in shock watching it. I was like, what the hell? As soon as I saw 95 cents a minute, I'm glad. I mean, kids have a lot of other ways to spend money nowadays, too. But that just seems like a terrible idea, and I'm so glad my brothers and I never tried that shit.
I never got into any of those phone things either. I mean, I'm a little younger, so I kind of missed some of it. It was mostly in the early 90s, but I never called in any of them. I never wanted to. I never had any interest in those.
Yeah, my brothers and I never did the Nintendo Power Hotline either. I guess we were just good kids, or we didn't want to piss off our parents.
Running up them phone bills.
Did you ever call any of those, Scott?
Nope. I never got into any of that either, at least that I can remember. I mean, who knows? Maybe I did, but I just kind of put it out my mind. I don't know. Probably as a kid, I was probably just thinking that it's just, part of the movie somehow, and even as if it's a thing that you needed to call. It's like, oh, look at this. This is probably just a fun little teaser to the movie. This is actually being something you could physically do,
Let's get into the feature presentation.
And now, our feature presentation.
I got a lot of questions. Hopefully you guys can answer them. They're moving to a suburb in Boston. Their parents are having a hard time. You see all the conflict there. And so the peanut butter and onion sandwich kind of physically made me ill looking at it. What? Why? There's my first question. Why?
Wasn't there something when you were his age though that was like kind of weird that you love to eat? You know, like
Not that.
not that, but
That's really extreme. I don't know what they're trying to do with it. Like, to me, he doesn't seem like a weird kid. So I didn't know if they were trying to like set up that he's, you know, kind of a little bit of an outcast.
Yeah, it'd be like a monster food. Like that's something you could see Maurice eating. You know, you know, maybe it's just a way to tie in that he's as goofy as these future creatures you're about to meet. You know,
Maybe.
yeah, I think you're right on the money. Actually, I think you're right on the money.
Gross. That's yuck. Yeah, and then we get introduced to some of the kids that he knows, his friend at school and everything. And I think the girl was someone new he was meeting. Because was this a new school? I didn't catch that.
Yes, he is at a new
Yeah.
school. He just moved. He's kind of feeling like an outcast, even though he is kind of a normal kid. But then, yeah, definitely starts a friendship with this girl who's sort of like his schoolboy crush.
Yeah, and then we get, Buzz in there, which as soon as I saw him, I was like, Buzz? You're in other movies?
yeah.
Now, is he odder looking in this one or in Home Alone?
Home Alone, come on. I mean, they try to like dress him up nice in Home Alone. It just doesn't fit him. I feel like the whole long hair, just punk. I feel like that's more suited for Buzz than more so. I think for Home Alone 2, when he's all the church in the beginning, the church scenes and all that, or the school choir scenes, how like nice he is. That I'd much rather see Buzz in this light than that light.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, he did make me kind of giggle in this, but mostly it was a nostalgia giggle. I mean, what happens to him, I don't think is fair, but I do like their fight. We'll talk about what happens to that poor kid. I mean, not many people deserve that. Yeah, so we get into like he's eating the peanut butter and onion sandwich, and he's starting to get blamed. Now he did do that, but he's also starting to get blamed for other things throughout the house. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, it must have been my little brother. And of course, the parents aren't going to believe him. Like, go to your room. Stuff like that. Blames his little brother, or, he's like, it must have been him. And of course, he gets sent to his room. Now, I don't remember how quite we got into the booby traps, but I was pretty impressed with what he was doing to capture the monster under the bed that his brother says is attacking him at night. Anyone remember how that happened?
He first has like there's the scene where what's his Ben Savage? Is that the Boy Meets World kid? What's his name?
No, it's Boy Meets World Kid. That's actually his official name.
His real name? Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Ben Savage. He has he gets scared in the middle of the night. He has like a moment where he sees something and he's convinced, and he's littler. He's younger than Fred Savage. So besides like the ice cream falling on Daniel Stern in the beginning, or him running over the bike or whatever, the sort of little things that Maurice is doing throughout the house. Yeah, then he scares the brother, which then leads to Fred Savage staying in his brother's room because he's going to try to catch him. And that's when he sets up all these kind of booby traps with like Doritos, perfect product placement there, and all the clothes traps and stuff. So, it's a little Home Alone-y here.
Yeah, and now I remember. It was I double down bet, something like that. A double or nothing. I dare you to spend the entire night in your room alone. Is that what it was?
He does it, and then he sees something then too, and then so he's like, double or nothing, I'm going to do another night, and I'm going to catch this guy.
All right, now it's coming back. Yeah, and so he sets it up, and then he captures Maurice, and then once he meets Maurice, it's just crazy. I've never seen someone do this much. Now, obviously, we saw Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice, but this one is at a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, it's Howie Mandel and his best and I guess worst, tendencies. Just like cranked up, dialed up, bouncing off the walls, crazy. I'm not going to accuse him of being on a coke because I don't know, but it's the 80s, so it's that like sort of ultra charged performance, like Beetlejuice on 100 or like a Robin Williams at this time kind of performance.
Yeah, and I was looking back too at Howie Mandel's career, I guess, and I was looking at his acting career, and I want to say that this was only his excluding voices and all that, I think this was only his third role, but all the other, like, this was his main first role, like where he was the guy. So it almost like maybe he's using that as adrenaline to, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just curious if that like played a part into how just absolutely insane he was. I also want to point out too how clever, going back just a step, how clever the trap was to trap him in the room for that Fred Savage did.
Yeah, I mean the trapping in the room. Did anyone get like this weird feeling that like he just watches Maurice melt to what he thinks is his death? Like he's like, just put me underneath the bed, and he's melting, into clothes. And I was like, he didn't even like pull him underneath until he was fully dead. I was like, damn, dude. Like I don't like monsters either, but if I saw a monster suffering, maybe I want to help the monster out a little bit. He didn't. He just sat there and he's like, bye.
Well, also too, if you were in his shoes, would you be? I don't know. I probably would have.
Oh, if I was in his shoes and I saw a monster like that pop out of my bed, I would have ran out that fucking door so fast. Like, no, there's no way. So I could see that, Brian was paralyzed with fear. I just thought it was funny as the movie choice that they let the kid just have Maurice kind of die. I mean, that's what I would have think as a kid. That would have freaked me out as a kid, and I really don't remember it.
Yeah, I think I would have actually, though, as a kid behaved the same way, because it's like, I'm getting in trouble for shit that this guy's doing. So we got to eliminate him.
Yeah. I get that too. But, at least they're like, you should have had him like, ha, that's what you get for getting me in trouble or something like that. But Brian has no line. He just watches it like, holy shit. So it's kind of funny. And eventually, I guess he comes back because his clothes start talking. And I do like all the effects that they're pulling off in this. This is really cool in-camera effects that I love.
Pay homage to the movie as a whole, the production design, the special effects, and the director himself was a guy, Richard Thornburg, I believe. He worked on Predator too as a special effects. So I mean, and a bunch of other movies. I think to your point, Steve, all the effects, especially in '89, were great. They were excellent.
That's one thing. If you get a visual effects guy leading the movie as a director, you almost always have something great for the eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was a totally like an interesting case where like the director, coming from effects, and specifically he did the title treatments for a lot of movies, so like the title cards and like the opening credits for movies. He designed one, so he's got an eye. So you've got that. And then you've got the effects team from Beetlejuice doing all the creatures. So you've got that. And then like for the clothes, they brought in a team that did like, and I don't really remember these, but they talked about them in the documentary. This team that did these commercials with talking clothes that were in the 80s. So like they brought them in to kind of make the clothes move and stuff like that. So they've kind of got all these creative minds, visual people, Beetlejuice being one of like the biggest creature movies of the late 80s. Specifically the way like the clothes move when they're just clothes, and then you have a super visual director. I just think it was kind of a nice alchemy, of all these things, and we start to see that be highlighted in this early part of this movie when we first meet Maurice and we see the clothes moving. It really like the imagination really kicks off here.
To your point about all that, it's also a fun story. A lot of times you just get one or the other. Great effects, terrible story. Or vice versa, and I think it applies this all around. It's good, great effects, and just a fun story as well.
Now that we've mentioned Beetlejuice a couple times, I guess we can just hammer away the comparisons. Matt, you were saying that this was before Beetlejuice.
Well, it wasn't before. Beetlejuice just hadn't come out yet when they started filming this. So Beetlejuice came out in '88, and they started filming this in '88. So it hadn't even come out. But Howie Mandel had gotten a lot of comparisons to Beetlejuice in his performance. And he even says in the documentary, he goes, Michael Keaton was a comedian too. We were up for a lot of the same roles in the 80s. Mm-hmm. It was just, that was their bits and that was what they were up for. So they both were offered a ton of stuff that was kind of like this. So that's, where that comes from. And then you also, with having those effects people that did all the work on Beetlejuice, a lot of the stuff is going to look similar. And I don't think the monsters in this look any similar to like Smoking Guy or Shrunken Head Guy and Beetlejuice or anything like that. They're different enough, but I think having all those kind of, rogues gallery of monsters, I think it drew kind of the comparisons, and they were coming out at the same time. But they all say in all the documentaries and all the featurettes on the Blu-ray that like the Beetlejuice wasn't even out yet, so they didn't know. But the reason it feels that way is all the effects people, they brought on all the same people that all worked together on Beetlejuice. It was just it worked there. So when they moved over to this show, they just brought their whole team over, and they knew what they were doing. And people were excited about Beetlejuice, and insiders knew kind of like the effects work that were going to be on display in that movie. But like that movie actually hadn't even come out yet, so it wasn't like they were just ripping it off.
Yeah, I wonder if both of these guys were more like trying to have their Pee Wee Herman character.
Probably.
Because that came out, he had been doing that shtick for a long time, but then he got the movie that came out, I believe, in 87? 86. So you look at that as Michael Keaton and as Howie Mandel, you're like, wow, man. I mean, he's just doing his thing on camera. Why can't I do that? And they're, you've got Michael Keaton and Howie Mandel both going out for the same roles. So I imagine both of them were doing the same things for both characters. The big difference is Tim Burton is really good at crafting a story along with bringing in people for visuals. So he knew how to take that Beetlejuice character and tone him down. Not so much in toning him down on screen, but taking him down in the amount of minutes. Hey, the guy who's trying to do 110%, let's just put him on camera 18 minutes. In this movie, they're like, the guy who's doing 110 minutes, let's put him on camera 60 minutes. Probably not the best idea.
That's a good scenario because Mandel on the documentary, as Matt was saying, was him and Keaton were competing, and the whole Pee Wee Herman thing, Pee Wee's Great Adventure, was Tim Burton. And I'm sure for Beetlejuice, I'm sure they both, there's probably a good chance they both auditioned for that. I don't know personally. You guys would know better than I would, but I think that's a good point, that why the characters seem to be very similar is because they prepping for the same roles, essentially.
And I think to your point from earlier, Scott, I think this was going to be a vehicle then for Howie. Like this was going to be his, you said it was like his third role. This was going to be him front and center doing his shtick. What a better sort of basically the title character of this. He's the head of the monsters that we see in the movie or whatever. So like this was his thing. This was his movie he was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like Michael Keaton had Beetlejuice, Pee Wee Herman had his movie. Like this was going to be his thing.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about other things that he did that kind of surprised me was the cat food in the tuna fish sandwich, and then pissing in the apple juice bottle.
Yeah, this one rides a line. I feel like where it's a little harder edged for kids than typical PG stuff from this time or whatever. This is a little grosser, it's a little rougher, it's a little more sexual. Like there's a lot of like stuff that Howie Mandel says that's like super questionable. Like it's a little bit rougher of a PG movie than I think I was expecting it to be. But then again, when I was watching this in the 90s, I was so desensitized to that shit because it was everywhere in all our kids' movies at the time, I guess. But like, yeah, I was just surprised watching it now.
Yeah, after watching Beetlejuice, and Pee-wee's, Big Adventure and everything like that, yeah, there was something where we were kind of just getting used to it. But looking back, the pissing in the apple juice bottle surprised me.
So gross.
Because that just feels like something that, like, moms would go after. I don't know if they did, but I assume they did. I don't know.
They probably didn't because nobody saw this movie.
Oh, good point, yeah.
Nobody saw it until video.
To that point, Matt, too, for it being a nostalgia thing, I remember watching this movie with that very scene. I remember being worried that siblings were going to try to pull these pranks. I was the youngest in my house. You see these scenes and then you kind of like tiptoe around the house, make sure that you don't, piss anyone off, so that, no pun intended, so that none of that comes back to you. So that from a nostalgia point, Steve, be fortunate with your brothers that you didn't see this movie when you were that young, because I'm sure they could have gotten some ideas if you made them upset.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that my mom never bought this for us. I think we possibly rented it. I just really don't remember this really sticking with us as kids. I guess when it came to our comedians doing outrageous stuff, we just stuck with Beetlejuice. We went that direction. Oh, like we weren't even big into Pee Wee Herman. I remember watching it a little bit as a kid, but really not that much. I don't know what it was. I think we were just into wrestling too much. That took our wrestling and sports with our monster films, and you only have so much time.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, when we get into it, they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Shredding the girl that he likes, report.
Mhm.
I was like, damn. But I think what really, it even pushes the kid too far is when they go to like terrify the newborn baby, which is like a big thing for the monsters.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was definitely a scene where I was like, man, this is dark. What were they gonna do with the baby? They weren't gonna eat it, were they?
No, I think they like the scare, kind of like the Monsters Inc. thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think they just are going after the scare and what pure terror you can get from like a newborn, a child.
Yeah.
But I like this scene because I think it pushes the movie. Yes, like you're saying, it's like, oh, that's kind of fucked up, but like you kind of need it to be to like sort of have the reality snap in for the Fred Savage character to be like, okay, this is wrong. I shouldn't be doing this or whatever. So I think the weight of that, even though it is kind of a dark scene and it is kind of messed up for a kid doing it, I think it's necessary to push forward in like a positive way, where and it sets us up then for the the later thing, the very Monster Squad meets toys kind of ending with Boy and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think like you got to pull back and think about this. Now, Beetlejuice made sense why it was so, why it worked so well. It wasn't for kids. We watched it, but I think it was more like for young adults, which then kids latched onto. Because that's the same thing with horror movies, like with the Nightmare on Elm Streets and stuff like that. It was for young adults, but because it was so cool with them, kids watched it. And I think Beetlejuice kind of follows into that. We talked about in Beetlejuice where it was a nice like transition from those type of characters from Chucky's and all that, where it was made for, people in their 20s on dates to see. And then it like spread to us being younger, mostly talking about Scott and I, because Matt was more of a 90s kid. But with this one, other than not saying that you didn't get into Freddy, because you absolutely did. But with this one, like if you're making it specifically for kids, I think you went way too dark. And if this really would have hit a lot of theaters, because I know this was, during Vestron just going bankrupt, and this like saw 150 theaters or something like that, and didn't even make $1 million on a $7 million budget. Ouch. That is a bomb. But I think you got to pull back a little bit. And if this would have went into theater, there's too much here. Or you just are writing a line that's too far. It's not really for anyone. It's not truly for kids. It's not truly for, you can't take a date to this. Who's going to, be, around college and everything like, hey, babe, you want to go see Little Monsters? Fuck no. It was tailored towards kids. I think this is a bad job of marketing and a bad job of storytelling in the fact that who are you going to sell this to?
I think, yes, they're trying to kind of have, like you're saying, they're cake and eat it too, where they're having kind of a harder edge, thing for, adults, teens, college kids, whatever, but also for kids. But I think more so this movie, and I think this is maybe just why it didn't transfer and really become like a hit until video later, was I think it was kind of made specifically for kids like us. That like, this is a kid's movie, but it's going to have a lot of weird stuff and spooky stuff and monster stuff and crazy stuff and gross stuff. Like, it was kind of made for like an audience like us who wanted kid stuff at the time, but something that pushed it a little further. But like, those movies don't tend to make money. They do tend to be found later when those audiences see them, when they do eventually come out on TV, video, and stuff like that. So, like, I think I don't feel like this is one of those cases where it's totally having their cake and eating it too. I do feel like they were trying to make a kids movie for kids who like weird stuff. And so sometimes, that just doesn't make money in theaters. It's not mass market stuff, if any of that made any sense.
It's the same thing with Monster Squad. I loved that as a kid, but did it hit the, normies of the world? No. That's why it's a cult classic. And I think this is writing the same thing with the cult classic. It's just you're not hitting the big market. You're hitting a little acute, target in the market. It's not a good way to make money. And I think they learned the hardest way possible by, I don't know if this movie put him bankrupt. Vestron was having a lot of financial problems before this, but this was definitely the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I think the ball was already rolling on this movie as it started to as the collapse was imminent. So they had the $7 million to get it made, but then they just didn't have any money to take it over the end line here.
Yeah, and MGM's like, oh man, what are we gonna do with this? Stick in a few theaters, put it out on video. Now I think this is a cult classic in a way. Not a huge one, but a little one. I guarantee you there's little monster fans like Scott out there who watched it as a kid. The thing is you got to hit the collectors, because Scott likes this as something that he watched as a kid, but he's not a collector. So you've got an even smaller market where you got to hit the Matts of the world.
Yeah, and for me, I just like it from the standpoint of the imagination part. Like you said, I'm not a collector. I love the story, and it took me years to, just a month ago when I rewatched it, it took me that long to realize how similar Monsters, Inc. was to this. And I loved Monsters, Inc.'s my favorite Pixar movie, and it makes total sense now. Why? Because I just love just the idea of this monster world and the teleporting between the worlds, whatever you want to call it. From that standpoint, it's more of just an artsy imagination film. Yeah, I would say it's a cult classic, but there was a tier of cult classics. I would say this is at the bottom for sure.
I agree 100% with this. It's totally a cult classic. It has crossed over beyond just sort of the video market that it did well in. It has had some lasting fans. I think it's growing. I think more people are finding the movie. I don't think it's ever going to reach a level of a Monster Squad or Beetlejuice or something. Well, Beetlejuice has crossed over into entire classic territory, but I don't think it's ever going to reach those levels, but it has already amassed fans. And the Vestron release that they just put out on Blu-ray this year, a couple months ago, I think signifies that. I don't think they would have put it out if there wasn't an interest there. So I think it is a lower tier cult classic, but it has gone on to become a cult classic. And I do think it is because of the imagination. And I do think it is people that have heard about it after watching and loving the Monsters, Inc. and University movies. I think it's kind of known that this is probably the thing that Pixar ripped off for those movies, and I like those movies a lot too. So I'm not super critical of that. I'm critical of Pixar because they rip off everything, but I still like those. It doesn't mean that I don't like those movies, though. I think Monsters University is my favorite Pixar, one of my favorite Pixars. The imagination of it, I think, is the thing that keeps it going, and all those creatures and all those monsters, and sort of being in that world, that monster world, and all that cool stuff. I mean, it lights you up as a child if you see it, but then when you're watching it as an adult, you see all the kind of the work that went into it. And you're like, holy shit, this is impressive. Yeah. So I mean, I think that adds to the charm of it as well.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Lionsgate wouldn't have spent all that time coming up with a movie and a documentary and everything like that if they didn't think the Vestron library that they own, if this wouldn't sell to collectors. So I thought that was cool. When you told me about that, I looked up everything in the Vestron collection that Lionsgate's done, and I'm impressed. Another thing that impressed me were the bad guys in this film, because going straight into that, Rick Ducommun, is that his name that played Snik?
Snik, yeah.
First of all, I had no idea that was him until about halfway during the film. He said something, and I go, who is that guy? I know him. I've seen him. And I was like, oh, holy shit. It's the friend from Suburbs. Or The Burbs, I'm sorry. And, Groundhog's Day and everything. So good job from him. It's crazy, that makeup. He's a terrifying bad guy. And he's smoking the whole time. This smoky, presence that he has. And when he pops the kid's head off, that was another scene where I'm like, holy shit, movie.
You're scared of me, aren't you, Arnold? Oh, I like that. Oh, I love that. But you know what I like even more than that, Arnold? taking my 2 big, black, leather-gloved hands and grabbing your head and cutting it off!
I mean, if there was a dark kids movie, like, there's dark comedies and whatnot. If there was like a dark kids genre movie, I mean, this would fit right in with it, with, scaring the baby, popping the kid's head off, pissing in the drink, stuff like that.
Yeah, this movie's a no holds bar for kids. Like, it's just like, all right, kids, we're gonna put you through the grinder. We're gonna show you what the real world's like, and you're like, maybe we should try more of like Adventures in Babysitting, Brit, instead of like whatever we're doing here. Like, this is a little much.
Yeah, instead of like another, like, to take it a step further, like Boy, who is like basically this movie's Leatherface, where he's got like a child's face stretched over his like monster face.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? It's terrifying. And Frank Whaley's performance is so crazy. He's so creepy in this movie. Yeah, Boy's nuts.
Brian. Let's make a deal. It's your wits and grace that I desire, not those of your pugnacious chum or even your silly mute little girlfriend. I'll let them all go. And your brother. If you'll stay and be my pal.
Yeah, the real bad guy in all this, and especially his lair, which is upstairs. I know there's some kind of symbolism there about going upstairs. I don't quite know what it is. And then, he's acting over the top. And I love Boy. The actor who plays Boy, though, I just suddenly forgot his name.
Frank Whaley.
I mean, he's been acting forever.
Mm-hmm.
He's in so much.
Oh, he's one of my favorite character actors. Every time he shows up in something, he's great.
Yeah, he is. Always gives it his all. And that's probably why he keeps getting jobs. I mean, he's just a really good character actor and in this role, he blends into.
Yeah.
I didn't even know who it was at first until I looked him up.
Perfect casting. Yeah, perfect casting for this.
So, I mean, this definitely got him a lot of jobs because he's comfortable working in makeup. Always good for a character actor. I don't know if he did any more makeup roles. Some of them, just say, nope, never doing this again. Too much fucking work. Too hard.
Which Howie Mandel did. He was like, I'm never doing anything like this again.
Yeah.
I mean, all that work that he did, putting on the makeup and everything like this, and then you don't get any credit. In fact, people probably like discredited him because they're like, "Oh, nice job trying to be a Beetlejuice," and he's like, "No, we didn't know. I wore those damn horns, and all you kids are making fun of me." Yeah, we didn't even address that. So they get the horns for being in the sunlight?
Yeah, I think he's just in the world. It's like a reaction to being in the other world for too long, where it's like it doesn't kill him. It's not like the sun melts him or whatever. It's like he is changing in the same way that like Fred Savage, after he starts spending too much time in the underworld, his arm starts to disappear. So I think it's that same thing. He's spending too much time in the real world, so he's like mutating.
Yeah, and how about another thing where I think they go a bit too far is after they escape. Well, the dartboard scene, that one, okay, I kind of thought that was fine pushing it there. Some people might disagree with me because you don't want like the older brother putting a kid at a dartboard and throwing darts at him, but I just thought the one that I was shocked as, they shrink him down, they shrink Maurice down, put him underneath the crack in the door. He lets him out. But then Maurice burns Snik basically to death with a flamethrower. I mean, I don't know if he was supposed to be dead there. I don't remember if they showed like a corpse or anything, but that's what he does. He just takes a fucking flamethrower at him. I'm like, whoa, movie. Wow.
Well, you see, in the 80s, we eliminated our bad guys.
There's no chance of a sequel.
It's not like today where we're like, we got to be better than them. We got to put them away. We got to make them learn their lesson. Back in the 80s, we just nuked them. That's how we took care of our bad guys in movies, especially kids' movies.
Yeah.
Eliminate them.
No one's going to be begging for a sequel of this because we can't. We killed them. Not coming back. Other than they could put a Friday the 13th spin on it. Yeah, I know. We sliced his head off and whatnot, but he's fine. He's a zombie now. I mean, There's no rules in the monster world. But finally, the kids, it's time for them to go. Fred Savage doesn't want to turn into a monster, and they end up traveling. Now, I love this part. This is actually a part where this was adventures. This was like Goonies. You know, kids going on an adventure where they're running from time zone to time zone until they finally get to Malibu before the sun rises. And you know what? It could teach kids about time zones. We got some education in this. 1, don't piss in an apple juice bottle. And 2, time zones. We're learning.
I thought this section was just a delight. I just thought it was so fun.
I know. I love the end, like where they're running to do that. And then he gives them the jacket at the end. That was cool. I was like, okay, that's what you got to tie into a little bit more. Now, I love this as a weird, early 90s film. Like, it's a juicy treat here. This is, this is like pizza found on top of the garbage pile. Still edible. Everything's great. And it's still trash. But as a whole, no, they did a bad job with some of this. But like I said, as a trash movie, nom 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 nom.
I think for me, like I just really like this movie. I never really had a connection with it, like a nostalgia thing. I'd seen it and I knew I liked it then, but I never followed up too much with it. But like watching it now, I just really enjoyed it. I liked all the imagination of it. I loved all the creatures. I loved the look of the movie. I think the director did a really good job. Yeah, I just like the creativity in general that all went into this that we just don't see in movies today was really refreshing and fun. Yes, it's a little sloppy. Feels like there's scenes missing and things like that. And the Howie Mandel performance is a little bit much for sure. But I guess I have a high tolerance for that shit. But I don't know. I really liked it, and as an adult, like not without any nostalgia to it, I really enjoyed watching it now, even though it's not perfect.
Did you see the gang of Terry Russo and Ted Eliott wrote this?
Yes, Pirates of the Caribbean team is and this was like one of their breakout movies too.
That shocks me. Right when I saw that, like Aladdin's on their credits, that had a lot of adult jokes too. But I think someone was smart enough to be like, okay, we'll throw this one out. We'll keep this one. We'll tone this one down a little bit. With this one, I think it was just like, you know what? We love all your jokes. Keeping them in. All this dark shit, going in. And then, because it was done by like more of a visual effects crew. And, the actual director was visual. I wonder if there wasn't enough producers or kind of people to go through and filter the story. If that had something to do with how dark this got, or if they were just like, fuck it, we're going to do an adult film in our kids' movie.
I think they just wanted to make, obviously the effects were the star here. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, Fred Savage, huge at the time, and Howie Mandel blowing up, taking off. But I think the stars of the movie were the effects. And I really think what the filmmakers were intending to do, I don't know this, like this is just like a guess. I think they were just trying to make like a kids movie where kids, weren't being pandered to and could be a little scared. It was a horror comedy for kids. I think that was the intent. I mean, like you said, nobody really told them to slow down a little bit or, maybe not make it so dirty. But like, I think the intent was like, let's make a horror comedy for kids.
Yeah, and before we get into the museum, I mean, last words on this, and do you recommend it? Matt, I'll let you go first, and I want to put too much pressure on Scott, the guest.
Yeah, all I would say besides what I just said is I recommend it.
It's a soft recommend, mostly for the visuals and for the like tasty treat of being trash of the early 90s. But I don't think a lot of people will like this outside of the, the weirdos, you and I.
Our listeners will like it.
Our listeners will, but not all of our listeners, I think, are quite there. Well, maybe they are. I don't know. Go ahead. Go watch it. It's good for the visuals.
Coming from just a different perspective on it, I definitely recommend it, especially now. I think it holds, having just rewatched it and not having seen it for quite some time. The story, I just love the story. It is everything growing up when you're just a kid playing with your toys and having this imagination. You just fall right back into it watching this movie, and they did such a beautiful job of the underworld or the monster world, whatever. Not underworld, I guess it sounds bad, but they did such a beautiful job of the set design. And when you're a kid, you're always afraid of the monsters under the bed, and to build a whole world from that, it's just so cool, and it still holds up. Watching it today, to this day, I think it still holds up just fine. And yeah, I mean, as you guys touched up on, there's a lot of flaws in it, but if you haven't seen it before, give it a shot. It's the era it came from, so always have an open mind when you're watching those things. And I was telling you guys before we jumped on, I just watched Witches for the first time, and it came from a similar era, and another movie that's a cult following, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, Witches definitely has a cult
huge
following.
cult following.
Okay, yes, and it has that feeling of it too. And so going into that, obviously when you're going to watch an older movie, you got to be a little more open to it. Obviously the effects are going to be practical, and it's going to be some cheesiness involved, but I just love this movie, and I definitely recommend it. Beautiful visuals, beautiful design, and a great story as well.
Oh, definitely. The visuals hold up really, really well. I think, the team of Beetlejuice behind this and whomever else they brought in, I mean, that's kind of like, in my opinion, the highlight is some of the effects that they pulled off in this. Like the talking clothes, and you said someone did a commercial and they used them. That's some of the stuff where that's what I'll always remember from this film. The chaotic, like dark stuff, Howie Mandel going nuts, and those talking clothes. It was just weird and fun to look at.
Yeah, it's just creative. This movie is just like creative, and I just it feels like a celebration of that. It's like, let's do a bunch of effects. Let's have this crazy story. It's like, what is under the bed, and the world of like going from the monster world back up to the kids' world and everything like that. It's a childlike imagination that this movie has come from, and with that like imagination and creativity, it's like infectious. You watch it and you're just like, yes, like it invigorates you because it's imaginative. It lights you up a little bit. So I think that is a testament to why this became a cult classic. I think it's that creativity that took it over the finish line.
Yep, agreed. All right, let's go on to the museum.
This is the second time I've had to reclaim my property from you.
That belongs in a museum.
So do you.
This is the part of the show where we go out in the film jungle like Indy and bring something back, good or bad. What's going into our family fun time holiday special November marathon? I don't know what we're calling this, but
that's exactly what we're calling it.
Yeah, it's a really long title. So I'll let Scott, the guest, go first on this. Good or bad? What stuck out to you? What are you putting in our wing of the museum?
Okay, so I'm going to do something that's a little obscure, I guess, if you'd want to call it.
No rules.
My favorite, and I told you guys this prior, my favorite scene is when we actually first meet Howie Mandel, or Maurice, and he's all spazzy and all that, but there's a scene where he is, the very first thing he sees baseball cards. I love baseball cards. Need them, got them, want them, need them, and every time, even as a kid, I love that scene. Cracks me up. I want to put in the baseball card that is, there's a specific baseball card that he's points out and it refers to, and I'd like to put that in, if that's cool.
Yeah, who's on the baseball card?
It is an unknown, and Steve and I are huge baseball fans. But it's a.
So I asked, I'm like, who is it?
Yeah, it's a Blue Jays player. I mean, there's a ton of them, but there's one very notable one behind, right next to Ben Savage's head, and it's a Blue Jay player named Mark Eichhorn, Eichhorn, and I'd like to put that in there because as a kid, growing up loving baseball, and then seeing this scene, loving that scene, I always couldn't tell. Thanks to the internet these days, back then didn't have that to our at our access. I now know it's Mark Eichhorn, and I've never heard of him. So I'd like to put that in.
Probably a bench player.
Probably. So it's an obscure one, but this one, because it is a nostalgia for me, that scene is like one of the more famous scenes that made me love the movie, and I laugh every time I see it. So I'd like to put that in there.
By the way, I found him. He had a win-loss record of 48-43 with an earned run average in his career of 3. He was actually a good reliever.
Hey, all right.
Or possibly starter. I don't know. I don't have the back of his baseball cards, but yeah, no shit. Learning so much about time zones and pitchers for the Toronto Blue Jays. I already kind of spoiled mine. I'm putting in the clothes. That scene where he melts and then the clothes kind of come alive and, he pushes him under the bed. And I think they even let it smoke for a while. I don't know how they did that. I really don't. I'm sure it's like wires inside of it with some, robotic animatronics, whatever they use. But that was a marvel to me. I was looking at that. That's nuts. It's short, but that's what I got. How about you, Matt?
There's so much to like effects wise and stuff like that. So I don't want to put in just like all the effects because that's too easy. But one of my favorite effects in general, if we're going to talk specifics and stuff, one of my favorite effects is also early on. And it's when he has the eyes come out of his head and they look like lobster eyes. And when he said, I think it's like the first sort of thing Maurice does supernaturally or whatever, with his eyes come flying out of his head. It's like very like Drop Dead Fred and Beetlejuice and stuff like that. I love the way those like eyes wiggle in the air and stuff like that. So I really like that effect specifically. But I guess the overall of that is like, yeah, the effects are incredible in this movie. But that's like one of my favorite ones. So I'm going to put that in.
That's actually a good comparison movie too, is Drop Dead Fred, which I think came out somewhere in the mid-90s.
91.
Oh, wow. It was that long. Okay. I thought it was more like 95.
No, it was earlier. So again, it's just plugged. It's like I was saying, like with the Home Alones and the Monster Squads, and it's like just plugged into. It's just right of this time, just of this. We were into this stuff at this time, I guess.
It reminds me too of when you had your string of disaster movies, like Dante's Peak and Volcano came out at the same time. Deep Impact, Armageddon came out at the same time. I feel like there's a couple times in the last 30, 40 years where you probably more than that. It seems that this happens frequently with a string of movies.
Oh yeah, it's Hollywood capitalizing on someone else's success. So I'm pretty sure when Pee-wee came out, you had WB then doing Beetlejuice, and you get Vestron doing Little Monsters at the same time, and then maybe another company was like, oh well, we've got a comedian, a British comedian, we'll put him in our Drop Dead Fred. I think he's British, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
or Australian or something.
Australian, yeah. So I think it is. I think they get wind of these in the production studios. One producer says something to another one at the bar, and before you know it, you've got a bunch of, I don't want to quite call them copycats, where it's more like a bunch of them had scripts on the shelves that they had bought, and they're like, fuck it, let's do it. Because what you can do is when you put it out in home video, if a kid goes there and he goes, oh, Beetlejuice is out, and you're like, yeah, but you got Little Monsters over here. That's kind of like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of get this, not quite little brother effect, but whatever it is, you've got they're not clones of the other ones, that's more of other companies specializes in that. But yeah, I could see that kind of just like branching off of, if they're going to do it, we're going to do one like that too.
I was going to say, so many people are involved in movies that to keep everyone silent. So to your point, Steve, yeah, totally. Everyone knows everybody in the industry, right? It's one of those type things. And, someone's going to be talking or have some drinks and spill the beans and whatnot. So Tim Burton's working on this crazy character and blah, 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 So yeah, I that's exactly how this stuff happens.
Yeah, we even talked about it in the Beetlejuice episode that we just did, that what a fun wave to be caught in, because that just meant that all these movies were super creative, like it meant that like we had all these creatures and we had all these monsters and we had these worlds that were built and stuff like that. And we talk about it like sort of the Tim Burton effect and how it rippled through to like superhero movies like The Mask and like Addams Family and stuff like that, like with the Beetlejuice affecting like the Little Monsters and the Drop Dead Freds and Toys and those kind of movies that came out in the early 90s. What a fun wave, because it just meant that all the movies were super imaginative and creative. We're so lucky that we like caught that wave as film fans.
Yeah, we got the way. Addams Family and Beetlejuice are kind of like the the two top for me. But yeah, there was a lot of these little films coming off the success of those, or that were just trying to follow that kind of same line of thought. It was a fun time. The early 90s had some great stuff when you were a kid. It really did.
Yeah.
All right, that is going to end it this week for our, look at November fun time movies that weirdos watch during the holidays. Okay, is that that's the next title? I don't know. I'm just every time new title.
Yes.
So we'll just keep going. Someone write them all down for us, and then let me know how stupid I sound.
And we'll bring it back every November then.
Yes. So it was a fun time. Thanks for coming on, Scott. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me again. It's fun. This is fun.
Yeah, it was super fun to have you.
And good luck with your little baby coming out into the world.
Oh yeah, 2 weeks. Oh boy.
You can watch all these old movies from when you were a kid and fall asleep during them.
There you go.
Good luck, buddy. It's awesome. I'm happy for you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
All right. Next week we'll come back with another one. We're not going to tell you what it is, but trust me, if you were us, you watch this shit. Yeah, next week is a pretty loony, episode. So come back for that. And remember to be kind.
And rewind.